esteemed panelists are here. I welcome them for this wonderful webinar, Navigating Shifts in Apparel Manufacturing and Sourcing, Leveraging Trade Deals, Sustainability and Geopolitics. So I take this opportunity to introduce about the topic first, and then we will be introducing the panelists. So first of all, I welcome everybody, all the viewers. A lot of viewers have been joining on the YouTube live also. So the situation is really tough as far as apparel and fashion industry is concerned. The global apparel sector is experiencing very turmoil time. A lot of volatility is there, and a lot of tariff wars are going on. There are geopolitical issues, supply chain disruptions. As we can see that a lot of oil supply and other raw material supply is disturbed. And now this is like not a recent thing.
Recording in progress.
It has been since many months now. Like trade war started, and then there were so many changes in the tariffs from different countries. On top of that, there are sustainability mandates, and of course, consumers are getting very aware, and we are facing a lot of expectations from the consumers. So we are like India, which has been the hub of textiles and apparel since long, and having a tough time. And we are on the crossroads, where we are at one time we are the global sourcing hub, and on the another side we are having our huge domestic brand growth also in the recent years. So the thing is that so far India has been known as export oriented country, and we are one of the leading exporters. But these all things which are current disruptions in the market, they have put a really tough challenging time to rethink on the strategies. And for the same reason we are here, to see that how the global market is going to take the change, how the Indian market is going to take the change, what strategies our apparel manufacturers should adopt, what strategies the global retailers or global buyers who are having sourcing from India, what they need to do. So considering all these things, we are fortunate to have the panelists from different domains. We have Mr. Subhashish Banerjee. I welcome Mr. Subhashish Banerjee to the panel. Mr. Subhashish is the Vice President and Head of Supply Chain Product Compliance in the Landmark Group. Mr. Subhashish is from IIT Delhi and I am Ahmedabad, and have work experience of working with the leading organizations like AWS, ABFRL and Woolmark in the past. Mr. Subhashish is an enterprising leader with a strong business acumen to develop, manage, grow, and establish successful framework of quality operations, buying and merchandising, vendor management, sourcing and product development, and commercialization in a large, diversified retail environment. So, welcome, Subhashish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me. Look forward to interact with all the esteemed panelists here.
Thank you. Now, another panelist is Mr. Neeraj Nagpal. He is the Chief Business Officer of Apparel and Retail Raymond Lifestyle Limited. Mr. Nagpal has extensive work experience of years with the Bazaar Retail, Shoppers Stop, ABFRL, and many more. And he has been pioneer in execution expertise and seamless collaboration via networking and extensive worldwide travel, and making the organizations in transforming by his innovative ideas. He has broad strategic analytical skills on consumer and market trends, and he focuses on functional global best practices as well, and he has been instrumental in transforming the organizations with his super strong knowledge base. And he has led the organization's wide business transformation, strategy development, and change management project with global consulting firms. Thank you, Neeraj sir, for this panel and accepting our request.
Very pleased to be here.
Thank you. We have Mr. Ramesh Nair sir, NIFT Delhi first batch pass out, and Mr. Ramesh has worked extensively in the manufacturing area across the globe, especially in the Middle East and North Africa and Bangladesh and East Africa, and he has more than 40 years of wonderful experience in the areas of apparel marketing, merchandising, sourcing, and operation management. And he has wonderful skills of lean transformations initiatives also. And he has been in consulting as well. So Mr. Ramesh is here to give a different perspective of global manufacturing, global sourcing, especially in the context of Middle East and African regions. Thank you, Ramesh sir. Well, I welcome you to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me in, Professor Batra.
Thank you.
So, Professor Tiwari.
Thank you, sir. The other panelist is my dear friend since long time, Mr. Durga Charan Das. He is the CEO of Stitch. They are working in industry 4.0 based transformations in the apparel manufacturing worldwide. And Durga has more than 20 years of work experience in the digital transformations. And over the years, we see that with the technological advancements, the role of technology is becoming very, very important, very critical for the success of the organization. And the transparency, the sustainability tracing, and all these things have become not a choice, but an essential part of the functions. So I invite Mr. Durga in the discussion. Thank you, Durga.
Manoj, thank you so much for having me here and to be a part of this panel, wonderful panel.
Thank you, Durga.
Love to be a part of this.
Yes. So we have 4 different diversified domain people as experts in the panel discussions, and one expert is from academics, Professor Bipin Kumar. Professor Bipin Kumar is associate professor with National Law University, Rajasthan, Jodhpur, and Professor Bipin is expert of international law, legal aspects, policies, trades, tariffs, and all these things. And he has wonderful understanding, especially in the context of apparel and textile also, that how the business is shifting and what are the legal aspects involved in all this. So Professor Bipin is there to enlighten us with his expertise. Professor Bipin is Director, Research and Advisory Center for International Economic Law, and he is the Chief Editor of Trade Law and Development. So I welcome Professor Bipin to the panel.
Thank you very much for being me over here, right? And as you told that international law, I am having expertise on international trade law, right? So
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So how we are going to move, I would like to just give you the idea that we will be discussing one-to-one first on different aspects, and then we will be working on some common issues, and then we will be having some rapid fire questions with the panelists, and then we will be taking up some questions from the audience if there are any, right? So I'm starting with Mr. Subhashish Banerjee. Yes, Mr. Subhashish, my first question is that we have already seen that a lot of things are changing in the recent times, and you have been dealing with the global sourcing, and you are working with the leading retailer in the world. And I'm sure that you must be having a lot of sourcing from India also. And you must be having sourcing from different other countries as well. So the first question is that with the global demand, which is becoming very volatile these days, the customers' point of view as well, and from the expectations of the buyers as well, then how are the large retailer groups rethinking their sourcing strategies across the regions? What kind of sourcing strategies you are adopting in the recent times, considering this volatility in the market? So that is the first thing. Please guide us on that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share some of the details of the. Is it audible? Because I'm connecting today from home because we had a huge cyclone yesterday, so everything is work from home today.
It is very much audible.
Can hear you clear.
Okay, perfect. So before we jump on to the answer part of it, let me just give you a brief overview of the operating environment where we are currently operating, and what are the key metrics based on which we take some of the bigger decisions in the business cycle. So it's very evident that today we are operating in an environment which in the management term we call VUCA: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. That's a very right word at this juncture and the region where we are operating at this moment. Now, but business has to run, and you have to navigate through the challenge. That's the job of the senior leadership team, to bring directions and take the business through these uncertain times. So what we would generally what we do is we say VUCA to be addressed by VUCA itself. Now, what does that mean? That volatility has to be addressed by vision. Uncertainty has to be addressed by understanding of what is your current operating environment. The complexity of the business has to be dealt with absolute clarity. And the ambiguity has to be dealt with super agility. So if we again term the answers, that answers again comes to the VUCA itself. So VUCA has to be addressed by VUCA. Now, when you are driving a vision, for example, you have to have certain percentage of the retail share for your company in the brick and mortar segment, in the online segment, the bigger pictures of the business. So that vision can only be set through if you have a clear understanding of where you're operating and what is your current state of affairs. And that understanding can only be achieved if you have a super clarity of what's happening around. So you have to be grounded, you have to be connected, you have to be super agile. Agility is the heart of retail. So slowly drifting towards your question now on how do we take decisions. So when we take decisions, we see both the ends of the business. We see the front end, what is my retail environment, how the customer behavior is changing in these uncertain times, how the behavior pattern, the consumption pattern is changing. And then how do we connect that pattern into your sourcing and supplier and vendor collaboration strategy. For example, in last 2 to 3 years, what we have seen is there's a very significant growth in our online channels across, which was not evident before COVID. COVID accelerated that because in this part of the world, mall culture is very evident. People on the weekends, they go to the malls. The malls are part of your entertainment centers over the weekends. So brick and mortar had a very significant share. I mean, that was the primary share of the retail in the market. But slowly, it has shifted to around now. If we say about the Middle East retail market, and 20 to 25% of the whole retail business is working on e-com channels. Now, what that signifies for your sourcing and for your supply management. So the moment you come into the e-com, there are two aspects to it. One is on the product and supplier collaboration, and one is on the policies. Now, in different parts of the world, e-com is treated at a different lens compared to the brick and mortar. Brick and mortar, you have the physical stores, you have your investments, you have your people working on. But when you come to the e-com, it's virtually non-existent. There's no physical footprint. You have all the cross-border goods coming in. You only have a warehouse, and then you have the last mile distributions, and it's delivered to the customers. So what does change in the sourcing pattern? The moment you give into, because this part of the world, manufacturing is very limited, or it's practically you cannot rely on for your sourcing and product availability. So we depend on imports, and import is primarily from the manufacturing countries. Of India is one of the biggest sourcing country of ours. Then of course we have China, we have Bangladesh, we have other manufacturing countries basis. What has impacted in our sourcing strategy based on this shift in customer behavior? See, India is in a very geographically advantageous position when we talk about the Middle East. The suppliers can handle lower MOQs. You can negotiate with the suppliers in a much better terms. When the manufacturing, the ecosystem, and everything is very, very suitable for you, for your lower MOQ orders, for your faster moving orders, because lead time is less. Within 7 days, the goods can come and go to the customers, compared to China, where you have a bigger lead times. If you have to do the air shipment, your cost goes up. So this is one of the things which has helped us to double down on sourcing strategy from our Indian suppliers. And that has channelized, and in over last 3 to 4 years, we have developed a lot of suppliers in India. They are delivering us exclusive for our e-com and platform orders. So the summary is, when the consumer behavior and consumer buying pattern changes, you have to adopt your supplier and vendor management strategy. You have to see your whole entire buying strategy and processes. You have to do your lead time and then associated financial analytics and everything to support that change in customer behavior. So along with the brick and mortar, e-com is now significantly contributing to our supplier development in India, and then associated all ecosystems of product development, supplier knowledge, understanding the suppliers, supporting the suppliers in terms of innovative fabrics and all the stuff, which India is still evolving. So this is how, when you talk about a bigger picture, this is one of the examples of how your back-end sourcing and vendor collaboration strategy connects with your front-end customer behavior and the buying pattern.
Yes. Thank you for your detailed answer. Very wonderfully, you have said that VUCA can be handled by the VUCA only. So with the same context, I would like to ask that I'm sure that you are managing the speed to the market, but at the same time, how you are managing the competitiveness and the cost effectiveness in the business at the same time, because whenever you are talking about VUCA, there are chances that that being cost competitive may be very challenging. So how you are dealing with that?
Okay. So now let me bring a little bit of supply chain angle to it. So we are being the largest retailer in this part of the world. We work with various authorities, the government authorities, the customs and port regulatory authorities, the standard bodies, and the policy framing bodies at one end. And we work closely with the world's biggest liners on the other side of it. So in the supply chain, our products coming across, as on date comes around, we source closely around 45 countries in our total global sourcing network. Some bigger countries like China, India, Bangladesh, they constitute a significant part of it, but we expanded to Indonesia, to some part of Vietnam, Sri Lanka, in the eastern side, South Korea, and then the western side also, our sourcing goes still up to Brazil for various different kind of merchandise. Now, but at the end of the day, the cost comes at the heart of all the discussions, because we are a value retail. So the costing strategy and the part of your what do you see, the supply chain cost and the associated cost of a product, you have to have a very fine balance in terms of how do we manage that, and how do you secure your margins, and how do you pass on the value to the consumer. So for example, we have long-term contracts with the liners like Maersk. Maersk is the world's largest ocean liner. And what do we do is, because we handle larger volumes, we are the anchor clients for all the global shipping liners. So even in this uncertain times, as currently what you are facing, whatever ships which is moving out from Sheki or Shanghai or Nhava Sheva or Malaysia, we have a priority segmentation for our products coming out from those markets. Compared to, if you talk about the competition, you have to have the airs, you have to have an associated cost baked into it, and then your FOB and whatever costing stuff that goes up. So that's what, if it all boils down to understanding your strength, what value you are bringing to your partner, and how the partner is acknowledging that and supporting to your bigger vision and objective. That's how we drive that cost efficiency into the whole supply chain and the product costing.
Thank you, Mr. Subhashis. You just informed us that you have 45 suppliers across the globe, 45 different countries across the globe, not the suppliers, I'm sorry. So how do you rate India out of these 45? And if you like, if I say that you rank India out of your all 45 countries, which number you will give to India?
Okay. Now,
and why?
see, okay. So ranking comes on what kind of products we are talking about. See, Landmark, we are the largest non-food retailer in this part of the world. So if you walk in any of the Landmark stores, you will find everything. So you have apparel, furniture, footwear, you name anything, food contact items, babies, furnitures, everything. So if I talk about the product mix versus the strength of the country, India, if I compare the usual debates which happens in the market, India versus China or India versus Bangladesh. So if I have to rank the product vertical and the country strengths, China holds a very strong competitiveness in terms of the products with ladies fashion, the polyesters, the synthetics, all the innovative fabrics, those kind of products. China's footwears, ladies high fashion footwears, these are the product verticals where China is at the absolute top in terms of their agility, in terms of their innovativeness, in terms of their factories, in terms of the ecosystem which is spread across the country. When we talk about India, India is very strong in terms of clothing, babies' clothing, cotton dominant products, innovative finishes in those particular areas. So India ranks very strongly in terms of those kind of product categories which we source primarily for the apparel products, and certain bit of footwear products which comes from Kanpur, Chennai, and those kind of hubs which are primarily for the formal segment. So, and Bangladesh is very, very competitive in terms of basics and large volume and large scale, because that's how the ecosystem and the country infrastructure has been set. So, if I have to rank China, India, and Bangladesh, this is how our whole sourcing volume currently spread across in terms of the apparel category. But in terms of other product categories like toys, like furnitures, ladies' footwears, in those categories, India is currently non-existent. And those are the opportunities and area for India to come up into the ladder, because currently in this kind of uncertain environment, the lead times have gone up. My stock cover is coming down. From China, you have to secure your container and the product, it takes time. And these kind of products, they have developed such a wonderful ecosystem that takes time for India to develop. We have a little bit of one or two suppliers coming up, like categories like toys. But these are the opportunities where Indian suppliers can come up and deliver value to the table.
True. That's perfectly fine. Mr. Subhashis, in recent times, the sustainability has become a very hot topic, and every international brand is asking for the adopting the sustainable practices across the globe. And vendor selection, whenever we are doing the sustainability, plays a critical role. So I want to ask that whether it is really consumer driven, or it is still a largely compliance requirement. So what is your say on this?
Okay.
Our consumers are really asking for the sustainable products? Are they really aware?
Okay. See, in this part of the world, customers are very, they know exactly on the sustainability part what's happening globally, because you have all the brands. You are competing against all the global retailer products. You can walk into H&M store, you can walk into Zara store, you can walk into Primark store. So all the global fashion brands are competing. They are just next door to our brands as well. So customer walking in those stores, they're also walking into our stores. So customer is very much informed, and it's very, very expat driven community. So you have all kind of 270 nationalities only in UAE, and then other countries as well. So nationalities is also huge. So people are aware of the sustainability drives being done in other parts of the world, and these brands, since they are here, so those products are also coming into this part of the world, and people see. So from the consumer side, sustainability is very, very on the high in terms of decision making at the point of sale. At the same point of time, the government in this part of the world is very, very strict from the perspective that these countries relies more than 90% on imports. Local manufacturing is very, very limited in this segment where we operate. So from the perspective of anti-dumping, from the perspective of low value products, cheap products coming into and flooding the market, they have to maintain the business ecosystem right to and level playing for all the retailers to operate. So government has a mandate from the cabinet in those countries to implement the sustainability related principles in the retail domain. So we are part of this various government sustainability initiatives. So we are aware of what kind of policies they are bringing in, like plastics are completely banned, single-use plastics no more. Even if you have to go for the point of sale, you have to pay for it. So micron thickness, which in India also it's already part of that. And apart from that, they have now started investigating on the logistics chain as well, like how you're delivering to the consumers. If the consumer is ordering a cosmetic product on the e-com platform, how your cold supply chain is equipped enough to handle and deliver that product, because the moment you're delivering, because in this part of the world, your temperatures are high. Your summer temperatures close around 45 to 50 degrees. So government is monitoring that customer has ordered something and your supply chain you are delivering. Are you maintaining the right temperature mentioned on the product where the product has to be kept and to be delivered? So those kind of strict adherence and the compliance checkpoints the government is now putting in place only because to ensure the consumer safety and security is in place.
Yeah.
And on the products like apparels, all the banned chemicals, whatever, which have been banned all across the world for long back, these are now part of the legislations in these countries. So legally, you cannot import those products into these countries anymore.
Great. Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Shubhashish, for your wonderful responses and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Please stay here. Let me talk to our other panelist now.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Neeraj Nagpal. We have already listened with the international buyer, international retailer. Now we have an expert for domestic market and retail strategy. Mr. Neeraj is having great experience, and he has handled. He's handling Raymond Lifestyle Limited as a CBO, Apparel and Retail Division. He was in Bazaar Retail. He was in Shoppers Stop. So, sir, welcome you again. And we would love to hear from you that we have already heard about the international retail. Now, please enlighten us that how India's domestic branded apparel market is evolving in this current difficult times. We see that Indian domestic market is growing, but I'm sure that the impact must be coming. So please share some insights on that, sir.
So thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting me to the webinar. I think India with 1.4 billion population, discretionary spends, younger population vis-a-vis the global world is obviously seeing strong demand, and I say this over a period of time. What's happening is what was happening in the West maybe 10 years back. India has started to sort of mirror the global West in terms of what's happening in the retail and the consumer side. So one is seeing that there is strong traction in the value space, and you have lots and lots of retailers who have come in under 999 as a price point, and some of these companies, whether regional or national, have gained scale. I mean, a regional player of about 1,000 odd crore to, let's say, a national player of about 10,000 crore. You've got at least 10 players operating at this level of scale. So consumption is getting driven. Market is going from unorganized to organized. So there was a time market was at 30%. Organized, as it's now, it's almost 45% plus is now organized in terms of absolute level, tending to 50%. The growth coming both in the value space, which is the starting point of retailing. MRP is below 999. Everything in the store at the average selling price between 300 to 500 rupees a unit. So tremendous amount of growth getting driven. And then if you flip it, the other side where profitability remains strong is in the premium or super premium bridge to luxury segment, where now post the GST there is a clear demarcation at 2500 rupees MRP and higher. Now average selling price, which means that typically at a sweet spot of 2625 rupees, there is a clear demarcation in GST. GST rate is 5% below that, GST rate is 18% above that. So the segment which is above this is also finding traction and growths coming in the premium and the super premium segment as well. So both the extreme end of the uh, sort of price segment and consumer segment seeing growth, seeing profitability, and I think the medium term, long term is looking reasonably good. And we are a consumption driven economy, and uh, in the next 20 years, as PM says, 2047 Viksit Bharat, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So some of those themes are underpinning a whole lot of supply side also gearing up on the manufacturing and the sourcing side, which means that not just that there is consumption that's playing out, there is also supply side which is sort of getting created to match that. And most of the brands and retailers, like Subhashish mentioned in his sort of this thing, are not just looking at India as a market for sourcing, but at the same time, most of the retailers and brands of a certain scale are also importing, whether it is Bangladesh or in certain extent, certain product categories, Sri Lanka. A lot of man-made fabrics and raw materials sort of flowing in from Far East, including China, and getting converted, whether it's India or uh, Bangladesh. So long, story short, consumption story would remain, as a good theme over the next 1 or 2 decades, with India, even the younger population sort of finding its way into job creation and entrepreneur sort of opportunity. Consumption remains strong. Of course, you have a VUCA world and a war that's playing out in the Middle East. And of course, when oil prices go high, when sort of homes are sort of anxious about where would the cooking supply come in, or where the industry is worried about how would fuel and steam for the boilers and things like that, and energy would sort of pan out. There could be a short term and a more sentiment and an emotion led uh, mutedness. But of course, as far as medium term, long term story, extremely robust. Consumption in branded and retail industries driven by various inflection points. India is a country of festivals. Indians like to, spend money, uh, you know, wear something good as far as apparel grows. Whether it's footwear, lifestyle categories. So happiness is spending the discretionary income. So festivals is important. Large amount of consumption happens during marriage, and India also has a marriage calendar to play out. So most of the brands and retailers like us look at how strong a marriage calendar is, how's the seasonality playing out, is winter sufficiently cold so that winter wear can sell, is sort of summer onset has begun for the linens to sell, for t-shirts to sell. So, as far as so therefore, uh, you have influx of direct to customer brands coming in. These brands are targeting younger customer, more trendy, more fashionable, more value packed in the product. So one is seeing for the evolving customer sort of taste, as markets penetrate to tier 3, tier 4 and beyond, organized retail increasing, younger fashion sort of coming into play, value fashion retailers expanding, premium brands becoming even more premium, so that one could look at people who are looking at coming up from a consumption point of view in a more evolved, sophisticated sort of a fashion approach, buying things which are nicer, better in terms of quality, luxury orientation, retail experience going up. So when you are buying products, you need a certain experience. You want to feel good by getting a certain service orientation. So retailers or brands are looking at delighting customers, pampering customer through better service, and therefore all parts of the value chain and functions are evolving, are coming together, looking at globally what's best, looking at how retailing can not just be only at stores, but online, combination of offline, online as omni. You have blinkitization that's happening. You want things delivered in 15 minutes. So you're finding brands also finding their way into quick commerce. So there was e-commerce, now it's quick commerce. A lot of D2C sort of brands. So exciting times, give or take few weeks here and there where it could be a minor sort of a mutedness or blip. Medium term and long term story would remain consumption driven, would remain strong. Both demand side and supply side sort of getting mature. So I mean, I'm very excited, and hopefully
Yeah.
for a country like India, we are in a good space.
So the picture we see that India is happy country, consumer sentiments. We love buying, shopping, and we are more festivals oriented. Lot of luxury buying, and you have said that all good scenario for long term as well. And Indian domestic market going great. Does it mean, can we conclude that the global disturbances are not having any impact in the long term on India? It is just a kind of time being scenario, or definitely there will be a dent on Indian economy as well. Not economy, but I say on apparel fashion business on India.
So let's say, uh, give or take 10 days back, a lot of brands and retailers were growing at strong double digit growth, and I mean same store growth. Now, with consumer sentiment sort of softening, that double digit growth would or is sort of getting muted, and therefore it's single digit growth. But it is still growth, unlike a lot of Western markets and some of the markets which are seeing strife and struggle. What we are fortunate is growth is still coming through. There could be days where it's sort of flattish or single digit, but if I look at give or takes few weeks back, and give I look at if this situation would improve, we'll get back to more stronger growths. But is the medium term and long term good? All the fundamentals, macroeconomics, government policies, infrastructure development, supply side getting created with manufacturing getting incentivized by states, including the labor cost incentivization, energy getting green. So there are tremendous amount of incentives for a manufacturer, B entrepreneurs, both from a policy standpoint and from infrastructure standpoint. And you've got a liberal sort of outlook from a capital expenditure perspective, a lot of support coming from both state and government center in terms of policies. So you have a very, very strong medium term and long term outlook. Short term is obviously, as retailers and brand sort of industry people, we look at what happened yesterday in sales and what happened last week and what happened last weekend. So one should, in sort of a more medium term horizon, be cognizant of what needs to be done. So obviously, if the times are stretched and stressed, we will look at how can we optimize cost, how can we drive efficiency, how can we hold some of the spends that need not be done, and that has a bearing. But is the demand outlook in medium term and long term strong? Yes. In short term, are we facing some of the headwinds and therefore looking at growth being sort of tight? It could be. And as retailers, we are very optimistic people. We lived it, day to day and week to week, and what happened last weekend and what's happening in the last 3 days. So yes, we are in the short time. Yes, as sort of fuel price goes up, polyester price go up, your packaging material cost goes up, logistics cost. Today I am seeing that government has reduced excise sort of on the fuel so that the price don't go up. So that's a good story that, and the logistics cost side, if logistics cost is protected, some of that, consumer side sentiment remains protected. So I see there is a lot of effort in protecting that sentiment and overall macroeconomic sentiment. But yes, when world is on fire, would we feel a little bit of a heat? Yes, we may feel little bit of a heat. But is Indian economy strong, resilient, infrastructure wise, sort of prudent, and are we working for tomorrow? Yes, I think there's a lot of work that's happened in the recent past and every day, and therefore we will emerge stronger. And there is a lot of work that's happening between industry, government, including academia here. So I think compared to anywhere else in the globe, we should be optimistic. We should be positive. And yes, I mean, we need to sort of strive that we remain above board in terms of what's happening recently. But I'm sure better days ahead.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Nagpal, one more thing. Like, how do you see the sustainability related awareness in the Indian consumers? Do you see a positive change in this aspect, or still they are value conscious or the cost conscious? That cost is first, sustainability is second, like that. Can you enlighten us in context of the domestic consumers?
So I think when you walk down to malls today and high streets today, you have not just Indian brands which have been created and designed and sort of proliferated over the last few decades. You also have international brands playing out, and some of the sustainability stories not just are now the global retailers, but if you look at responsible Indian corporates and Indian brands, we are very cognizant of, is our manufacturing capacity getting more and more green? Are our materials sort of taking a edge on sustainability? So you will find collections in Indian brands on recycled polyester. You can find, some of that. So one is that awareness has gone up. Is it to the level of West? I think we are still a few notches in terms of sensitivity around it, but consumers are very aware in terms of what a sustainable, responsible consumption looks like. And brands today are looking at some of the collections going sustainable. Products will have tags saying this is done in recycled plastic bottles and things like that. So you have some of the collection stories coming on from materials which are recycled, regenerated, uh, and some of those stories are sort of getting captured on the product tags. Our retail shelves are talking about that. Is it to the level of what Europe has probably gone, or US has seen partly. I think we still have few sort of hoops to sort of loop. But as far as consumer is goes beyond just fashion alone, even all forms of consumption, and you are seeing, just in automobiles, adoption of electric cars at 5-6%
Mhm.
of new. So there is a growing sense that the consumption needs to be responsible, it needs to be sustainable. Corporates are very aware where they're manufacturing from. Are those manufacturers sort of drawing in energy? Are they recycling water? Are they sort of dumping, or are they sort of recycling their effluent? Are there plants around it? While imports out of India have been very, very, let's say, aware about it, domestic sourcing is also sort of following some of the SEDEX norms. EHS and most corporates, awareness is going up. Most of the listed companies have chief sustainability officer who's looking at, across how the organization is operating.
Mm.
Are things, are processes more sustainability oriented, and responsible forms of governance is getting played out. So steps, some more to go, but have some steps already been taken? Yes, we are walking. We should be running soon, and I'm sure there will be a time when these themes would become even more important than what they are today.
Yes.
But yes, consumers are getting aware.
So do you see any opportunity for Indian manufacturers in terms of make in India brands due to these global disruptions?
So
Any opportunity you see, or like we are happy with our domestic market and we are not very much bothered about what is happening outside, or if we want to grow outside India by taking some advantage from these disruptions, is there any possibility you see? This is little uh, out of the box question.
no, I think it's a relevant question. Most of the brands, when we look at India as a country, and we are actually a continent when it comes to season and seasonality, languages, taste, preference towards fashion in terms of what sells where, in terms of colors, material. We are very, very diverse as a country. So even for any brand, and we are at the cusp where the organized sector is still less than 50%. So most of the brands and retailers have immense amount of opportunity to sort of look at growing and expanding within the country. Of course, if you look at retailers and brands, Indian brands have also reached fairly well, I would say, in the Middle East. You do find Indian retailers there, and few of the designer brands and luxury brands, and especially designers, have reached to at least the fashion capitals and of the world. So, but is there an opportunity of Indian brands to have a global story? Huge opportunity. And would some brands do it? Absolutely, it must happen. You have, all the multinational companies coming and doing business in India, but Indian brands must have a global ambition and a global outlook. And as brands start to mature from a value chain maturity perspective, where they are able to think about global customer, and supply chain becomes stronger, infrastructure becomes stronger, our scale in managing that complexity in terms of information technology, in terms of processes, to sort of leverage the global market. But I think if you look at today, the apparel players, you've got more than 10 players who are above the scale of 5,000 crore. Uh, and would some of these companies have a presence outside India? Yes, they have, to Middle East. Would they look at beyond markets? I think it's a question of how does one look at scale? How does one look at complexity of consumers? because his business is all about consumers, what do they like? And of course, as geography changes, as climate changes, fashion changes, and therefore concocting and creating a formula of fashion which sort of satisfies and delights that particular geography and that taste is something that is an opportunity. Do I see it happening? Absolutely. It is not just a matter of ambition, but it's also a matter of prowess, and skill sets to do it, and the systems and the technology to sort of leverage, and the supply chain for it to have. If you look at some of the Indian groups, they are doing in Middle East, not just serving the Middle East, but Far East and Africa as well. And do Indian brands have it in themselves? Yes. I mean, when you are satisfying a 1.4 billion sort of population, and of course, uh, we have various segments. I mean, right from a value to a mass, mid market, sub premium, premium, super premium, bridge to luxury, luxury. You have at least 10 segments playing out. So it's the 1.4 billion, while it's that figure, but once you structure it at various segments and you come to addressable market size and consumption that needs to be done, there is scale and opportunity. But of course, brands and retailers would be keen. And there have been some steps from some of the brands, but I also see, beyond just apparel, even the lifestyle category brands
Mhm.
going global from India. So yes, tremendous opportunity in India. I see that growth and expansion over the next decade or so as an opportunity. But I can also bet that, give or take 5 to 10 years, you will find Indian brands going global. Some of this conversation is surfacing,
Yes.
and it will happen.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful thoughts and giving us hope for a beautiful future of Indian market. Now I'm moving to our next panelist, Mr. Ramesh Nair ji, who is having extensive work experience of international manufacturing. Mr. Nair, welcome again.
So, Tiwari, thank you very much.
Sir,
So,
yes, sir.
well,
So, how the first question is that how do you see, because you are working in Kenya, how do you see that what advantage Kenya is having over India or Bangladesh as far as sourcing destinations are concerned?
well, we could look at it, we could look at any advantage in terms of both the economic or the non-economic advantages. Now, a few years ago, or maybe I would say before the quotas were in place, or when the quotas were in place, one was also always looking at it from the economic point of view. But now that a lot of treaties are coming into place, and after President Trump has come in, a lot of bilateral treaties are coming into place. And of course, he has set, I should say, the cat amongst the pigeon by having all these base tariffs and other reciprocal tariffs in place. So two things come into play. One is, of course, the economic factor. But the other is, I would say, the geopolitical factor. Now, most of the countries which come under what is cartographically from the map papers point defined as sub-Saharan Africa is all coming under 0% duty. In fact, after Trump came in, it's 10% duties. But most of these countries before Trump started out these 10% duties were 0%, and they were non-reciprocal, and there were no conditions attached. In the other point of view, I mean, you could bring in raw materials from third world countries, from third parties, and there were no strings attached. For example, if you had to import from Jordan, a certain percentage of raw materials had to be bought in from Israel or from other countries. Same was the case with Egypt also. With AGOA promulgated in Africa, or I should say sub-Saharan Africa since 2002, they allowed for what is called third-party raw materials. In other words, you could import raw materials of any kind to whatever value with no obligations and no reciprocal commitment. So that was one. That was the main point. Now, how does it play out when you look at something from a landed duty point of view? I mean, for a cotton garment, you could look at an advantage of 8%, 10%, or 12%. But when you go to polyester garments, the difference in tariffs can be as high as 28, 30, 33%. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of bigwigs, a lot of companies who have multi-country, multi-facility presence in India also made it a point to venture into Africa. I must admit, in terms of the wages, in terms of efficiencies, Africa is not exactly over there. Wages in Kenya are in the range of $215. Wages in Lesotho are in the range of $150. And if you do an apple-to-apple comparison, looking at a simple, basic crew neck t-shirt, or the sliced bread of our industry, the 5-pocket jean, we are there, but we are not exactly over there. But despite all that, why do people want to come in? One is, of course, the duty. And second is, you could talk of geopolitics. China +1 has been playing out. And most of the brands are taking a conscious look of wanting to source out of Africa. But so these are the advantages. But there are disadvantages also. And I will just list out 3 disadvantages. The very first disadvantage when anybody wants to come in and source from Africa is to look at the stability, the stability factor, the political stability. We have close to 49 countries in what is called the Sub-Saharan Africa, which is basically defined as all those countries which are below the Sahara Desert. So the North African countries of Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria are not counted as a part of the Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, these countries are there, but if you look at this entire chronology of events playing around from 2002 to 2006, countries have gone in and gone out. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Ethiopia was a darling, and then they had a sort of a rebellion in one of the provinces, and then it was thrown out of AGOA. US they threw Ethiopia out of AGOA. But again, peace settled in over here, things normalized, they've come in. So that is one factor, political stability. Even if you look at the political stability index, the best rating again goes to Kenya, which is again sitting at 0.94, sorry. Madagascar is sitting at 0.69. I'm talking of minus 0.69, and Ethiopia is at minus 1.97. So that's one factor. Second is about value chains. Now, 2002 was the year when AGOA was promulgated by President Clinton in his second term. So it's well over 20 years, but we do not see a proper structured value chain. As I see it from where I work, somewhere in East Africa, Kenya, Nairobi to be precise, we import from across 10 countries of the world. There's South Asia, there's East Asia, there are parts of Middle East, and something of what we need even comes from the US. So managing the supply chain becomes a challenge, because of which your lead times are large, because of which your cash-to-cash cycle is large, because of which your variability can also become very, very large. And you are again at the mercy of the shipping companies or the airliners, or again, for whatever reasons, variability across many, many factors. So that is the second thing. So these I would say are the 2 main factors. One is, of course, the political stability, and second is the fact that there is no structured value chain. All I'm aware of is one company based in Ethiopia which makes denim, and again, they're not stretch nets. So most of what we have to import, most of what we have to get in terms of our raw materials, is all coming from different parts of the world, and as I said, from across 10 countries of the world. So these are the 2 or 3 main things. And the third is, of course, the ease of doing business. When you have less political stability, when regimes come and go, it becomes difficult. 90% of the exports, if I talk of these 32 countries that are eligible, is being managed by 5 countries. Kenya is ahead, somewhere around $600 million, followed by Lesotho at around $230 million, and then followed by Madagascar. So Africa as a continent has a long way to go. There are advantages, of course, that it's a young continent, 59 million people, 70% people below the age of 28, all that's fair. But then Africa as a whole, despite the AGOA, despite the geopolitical preferences, has a long way to go.
Yes, that's there. So we see that there are challenges with the Africa. A lot of disturbances are there, political unrest is there, and all these things are there. And you see that AGOA was around 20 years back in the time of Bill Clinton, but nothing much has happened so far. But still, the world is, I'm talking about the apparel business, still the world, the international buyers are looking for Africa desperately. They are seeking for some alternative of Asian countries, especially China, right? So in this context, how do you see that down the line 5 years, what will be the future of African sourcing from the Africa, apparel sourcing?
This is how I see it, Professor Tiwari. Any company that wants to come into Kenya, and I see that, and I see this playing out for the next half decade or so, has to be a company that already is well established, unfortunately so, has a multi-facility presence, and then as a part of a product market or a product market manufacturing expansion strategy, if they're coming into Kenya, so to say, that I'm not going to lay all my eggs in the same basket. If that is what a company desires, then coming in will make sense. And if you look at the list of companies that have come in over here, be that Ambattur Clothing, be that Raymond, be that the Best Corporation, be that JJ Mills, be that Mas of Sri Lanka, Hydramani Group was there in Ethiopia. I'm not sure if they're there anymore. I'm sorry about that. So if the foray into Africa is part of a calculated, calibrated product market manufacturing expansion strategy, then yes, this will work out. But if any company wants to come in and start very fresh, I believe the gestation period, the entire learning curve is going to be too much. Having said that, the World Bank has been paying a lot of attention to these countries, and I'm aware of loans being given, but not copious amounts, $15 million, $20 million being handed out to factories for expansion of infrastructure, for skilling, all those things are there. So whether it is IBRD supported by Europe or the World Bank or the IFC supported by US, all these banks are supported by the US or the European Union are coming in, are also looking at as part of the China Plus One strategy. But very honestly, I believe 5 years to be quite upfront is too small a time. I would say the fact that you would need at least a horizon of 10 years. And the last point is the current president has not made it easy. AGOA expired in 2025, and the current extension that AGOA has is only for 1 year, just down till December 2026. So for any group wanting to get into vertical integration, wanting to go backward, and a lot of these companies that I mentioned are vertically integrated. Best Corporation is, JJ Mills is, Raymond's is, right? For them to look at setting up multi-million euro dollar projects over here, euro projects over here, or multi-million dollar projects over here, which will mean getting into spinning, dyeing, looking at the entire thing, they need a visibility of at least a decade. So the policymakers on Capitol Hill or the European Parliament in Brussels have to really sit down and decide that, look, are we willing to give an AGOA extension which says that, okay, here you have it. For the next 10 years, nothing is going to change. We have a set of rules and regulations. These are crystallized. These are in play. These are there. These are simple. We are not going back to a negotiating table. You have a clear 10-year horizon, and then you can see that the vertical integration will happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things don't exactly look very good, don't look very rosy. It is a struggle. Whatever we do over here are still basics. Of course, there are exceptions, but then at the end of the day, most of the garments that get shipped out of the African continent, I'm talking of all these 4 or 5 countries, are essentially basics.
Mr. Nair, can you tell us something about the level of productivities and the efficiencies in the African region as far as apparel manufacturing is concerned, and what is the status of adopting to the lean practices or technological advancements in those manufacturing setups if you compare that with the Asian counterparts? Just briefly, if you can tell us on this something.
So, Professor Tiwari, I was just looking at some numbers related to the manufacturing of a basic T-shirt or even a 5-pocket jean. Looking at numbers for a 5-pocket jean and comparing it to the productivity in Bangladesh or even for that matter Egypt, where across 8 hours they're making 800 or 880 units on 48 machines or so. I compare that over here, and what I realize is in terms of 5-pocket jeans, we're not exactly there, but if these countries are doing 880 units, we are somewhere there, I would say 80% or so, which essentially means it would come in the range of 640, 650 units. I'm talking of numbers, comparing apples to apples. However, I believe when I dug down a little more deeper, where I believe we'd get beaten is because when you look at washes, and I'm talking of 5 pockets over here, what I have noticed not only at the particular facility where I work or even in other setups, the rejection percentages are on the higher side, number one. Number two, from what I understand, to do a changeover on the basic 5-pocket would be 3, 4, 5 hours, in fact, much more less than that. The rates in these parts of Africa are much higher. They could be day, in fact, a minimum of 2 days, 2 days or even more, in fact, a minimum of a day or more. I mean, at the end of the day, you could say that a 5-pocket is a 5-pocket is a 5-pocket, but then there are variations, whether it's in terms of needling or the seams or the sizing, right? So that's where, so those are 2 areas. One is the changeover, how fast, a style can get changeover, even if it's a 5-pocket. And the second is, what is the wastage percentage at the end of the day compared to, say, Egypt, Bangladesh, India, and you compare that to Africa. So those are 2 areas where we get beaten, even though in terms of the productivity, per machine, per worker, per capita productivity, maybe we are over there, 70%, 80% we are there. But still, these are 1 or 2 areas where we need to get in. On top of it, if you'll allow me to if you give me another 30 seconds, logistics costs are on the higher side, finance costs on the higher side in these parts of the world. So this is where, again, I said groups which are, and I'm on the sound, I'm being repetitive about it, groups which are very well established, they have a multi-facility presence, they want a multi-country presence, they have established financial networks, they are banking outside Africa. For them, this would be good. For countries wanting to rely on Africa for finance and logistics, of course, is common to everybody, finance, the uncompetitiveness or the level of competitiveness would decrease. These are my observations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nair, for sharing your thoughts, especially on African manufacturing. Now I move to the next panelist, Mr. Durga Charan Das. Hello, Durga. Is Durga there? He's there. Hi, Durga. You are on mute. I can unmute you.
Yeah, actually, I was not able to unmute myself for some reason.
Okay. So, Durga, you have extensively worked in Industry 4.0 based digital transformations across the globe. You have a lot of factories, lot of setups where your implementations are going on. They are live. You are updated with many countries and all these things. So, the first question is that can technology help us in dealing with these disruptions which are happening globally? How technology can counter these disturbances which we see these days?
Okay. So thank you, Manoj. And I'll be short in my answers, but because I think we have only a few minutes left. All right. So see, let me put this in this context. Like, we have seen the emergence of China, in terms of manufacturing, apparel manufacturing, Bangladesh, Vietnam, all right. And we counted them as decade of China, decade of Bangladesh, decade of Vietnam, and so on and so forth, right? Now, with the advancement of technology and AI, which has already into our daily lives, forget about the organization. So the next decade, all right, specifically in apparel manufacturing, let me tell you very clearly that China, in next decade, China will, if not fully, but they will try to go away from the low cost manufacturing domain. All right. And this kind of apparel manufacturing domain will come to the countries like, because that's how the time is changing. So the next decade, all right, of manufacturing, specifically apparel and fashion manufacturing, will not be defined by who is cheapest, which it used to be earlier, right? It will be defined by who is fast in response, more are more transparent to their partners, and smartest in how they operate. All right. Now, whether it is brands or manufacturers, okay, specifically the brands which are sourcing from different countries, they are not just sourcing products, all right, they are sourcing certainty. I mean, in the current situation where Middle East war is going on, tariff all over the world, right? Supply chain disturbance. So certainty of delivery, all right, timeline in this kind of volatile geopolitical environment. That's what has become more important for all the brand, right? Um, now, it is absolutely certain that you cannot do this with fragmented informations, fragmented data and legacy processes. Now, let's talk about the factories. The factories that continues to rely on, manual systems, spreadsheet, tribal knowledge, and reactive decision making will find themselves structurally at a disadvantage position, slow to respond, and vulnerable to disruption like this.
True.
In contrast, the winners would be those organizations, those companies who are digitally built from the ground up.
Agreed.
Right, where production is visible in real time, where bottlenecks are predicted, quality is, I mean, they could see where quality is engineered into the processes, where every decisions are kind of backed by data. This is not about kind of incremental improvement I'm talking about. It is about fundamental shift from manual management to intelligent manufacturing, processes.
So you say that technology adaptation is not an option, but it is a compulsion. It is a need actually, if you want to excel, right?
Yes.
So in the same thing, continuing the discussion, how do you see that Indian manufacturers, are they ready? Are they keen to take up the digital transformations, or they are still afraid with the capital investment that it will be very much high, ROI will not come, and all these things? So how do you see all these things? Because you are deep in this business. So tell us something about that.
To answer this question, some are all right, but most are not moving fast enough. All right. So again, India has the opportunity to become kind of, leapfrog in this space, because the the current generation are digitally enabled. They are well versed with technology, right? But again, uh, in an environment where I'm talking about the companies who are um, more concerned about adding up more resources, machines, and all, and who, the priorities are not technology. Obviously, they will fall behind. But fortunately, that mindset is changing. All right, but again, um, like top exporters, top manufacturers are already using data to run their operations. The rest are still debating whether to digitize, whether to put money onto this, whether it is, do we still need it? But if not today, then tomorrow. There is no escape from this. All right. And let me put it very bluntly. I mean, it is not a technology gap. Technology is available in whatever form, in whatever way you want. It is simply a leadership gap where they don't see it coming. And I think we all have realized in last 6 months that if we are not, even in our own work, whatever we are doing, if we are not upgrading ourselves into AI space, then obviously you are going to fall behind.
Durga, very, very interesting answer. My very next question is that do you see this leadership gap only in India or in other Asian countries as well? How do you find Indian manufacturers in adaptation, or you see that maybe Vietnamese or Indonesian companies are like quicker in decision making and all these things? What are your thoughts?
See, right now we are operating. Our client base is approximately in 9 countries right now. What pleasing about India is that um, the now the people have started thinking about it and they are already investing. But again, because uh, our industry, the number of companies, number of manufacturers we talk about, in terms of numbers, it's very small still. But to answer your question, if I rate India, obviously I'll with comparing the other manufacturing countries in Asia or in Middle East or maybe in Latin America, I would say India is moving ahead compared to other countries because of different reasons. See, the adoption of technology by the general people, all right, or the workforce actually. So they have already done it in terms of they know how to use tech, they know how to use app, they know how to uh, upgrade themselves with tech. All right. So in that respect, India is in a good position compared to others. But again, the other countries are also, pulling up their socks, where the management is have already started thinking about it, now also driven by tech driven management. So that's why I said it is the adoption of any technology. It cannot happen bottom up, it has to be top down. So wherever the management at the management level, the people are thinking about it, they are adopting these technologies faster than the companies who still are thinking that whether is it nice to have or must to have. That's the difference. But in terms of India, they're moving ahead and they're in a good position.
We have just discussed that sustainability is becoming very, very important. So how these technology-based solutions are helping in traceability? If you can briefly answer on that.
See, as far as sustainability is concerned, it's all about traceability. It is all about visibility. It is all about tracking everything what happens across the supply chain. You cannot do it without technology. You cannot do it without tools. Now, if you want to have a credible or if you want to have a sustained, credible, infrastructure or system across the supply chain, from brand to the manufacturers, to the raw material suppliers, to vendors, everybody, they have to have you know the traceability under one single platform. It cannot be broken. It cannot be in silos. All right. So it's absolutely important, but at the same time, the effort has to be from every stakeholder. Brand cannot put pressure on the manufacturer alone that you have to practice sustainability, but at what cost? Unless and until the entire stakeholders work together, take responsibility of their own roles, and things are in a systematic way, in a digital form, and from end to end, everyone have that access of the technology. It is absolutely doable, and people are also doing it. But still, I would say it's a long way before we come to a stage where we can say that we are in a position where we can say that we are following sustainable practices. Still long way to go.
Thank you very much, Durga, for your wonderful responses. I'm moving to the next panelist, Professor Bipin Kumar.
Yeah.
Professor Bipin, you are expert of trade policy and legal aspects. My first question is that how this ongoing tariff wars and FTAs are reshaping the global apparel trade flows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for for inviting me to talk about the certain issues which are very dear to me. So the question that is there, that how do ongoing tariff wars and FTA reshape global apparel trade flows? This is very interesting because as you were referring some time back, that the trade war, right? So I will start with the trade war, tariff war, and then the second thing that I will talk in terms of how FTA is shaping the geopolitical system. So in terms of trade war, this is not new, but rather to say when 2019 onwards, that the trade war that is taking place between US and China. In recent times, that when the President Trump's second term that is there, he started imposing the extra tariff. So extra tariff, that means, see, currently that the trade regulations that is in the world is done by WTO, World Trade Organization. And that talks about that when you become a WTO member, that every country is required to specify tariff. And that tariff is fixed. If you exceed that particular tariff, you are in fact violating the WTO rules, because 166 countries are the members of the WTO, and that is a rule-based system. So every country was getting regulated before this President Trump started imposing extra tariff. So the problem is that in the WTO, which was having earlier the dispute settlement mechanism in the form of appellate body, currently that is not functioning. So if a country that like US, which has imposed extra tariff, the countries are not having remedies. For example, that if the tariff has been imposed on India and subsequently it got reduced also in terms to China, that is going on. So that is in fact on apparel business, that the imposition of the tariff on China is in fact that has been there over 35% of the categories that is there, and that led that the Chinese share in the apparel and the fashion industry gone down. And that, in fact, that has shifted the market, because China is considered to be the largest exporter of textiles and other things. So the market got shifted. And that market shift that has taken place to Vietnam, to Bangladesh, to Cambodia, right? But then again, that the one interesting aspect is that when these countries started producing these apparels and other things, US was putting a sanctions that if you use any percentage of the Chinese products, then in that case, that will go to that particular countries which are in fact shifted the market. I want to talk in terms of the Bangladesh syndrome. This is very interesting because that one after the other, that everybody knows in India that who are there in the apparel and textile business, that the Bangladeshi textiles, that on that 0% duty that is imposed. So 0% tax that is imposed when that Bangladeshi textiles and apparels getting exported
by Trump.
Yes. No, this is very interesting. I will come on that.
Yeah.
So once the India EU 27th January that 2026, that the mother of all deal that has been signed by India, and in which the proposal is there, of course, that India EU regional trade FTA has not been implemented. That will get implemented in 2027 early. So the tariff that is there currently 9.6 to 12% on the Indian textiles and apparel, that will be reduced to 0. Right? So the Indian textiles, which are currently having 9.6 to 12% tariff currently, if they will be having 0% tariff, when that Indian apparel exports that is getting exported to European Union, that will give a tremendous boost to the Indian textile industry and all. So that is what that this tariff war that has created a situation in which India, in fact, become the leader in terms of, or rather to say, it becomes a trade magnet. How India had implemented, because if you see that, as I was telling, that this India EU regional trade FTA, India UK regional agreement, India Oman that FTA, that India is currently negotiating Peru with Canada and all. So what I mean to say that this the FTAs currently is reshaping the world in such a manner that Indian that the textiles and apparel business, when they will be exporting, but this will happen only post 2027 because when the tariff will be reduced. So what I mean to say is that in terms of tariff war has created a situation for India which has been utilized that very effectively by our current government by signing these FTAs. So this is my response to the that in terms of the reshaping global apparel trade flows,
Yes.
how FTAs are reshaping the world, right? Because the trade that is shifting from China, and that shifting, that in that the share is required to be taken by India, and India currently is very effectively, nicely preparing to, in fact, own that particular share. So this is my response.
Professor
Right.
Bipin, can you enlighten us in the risks involved in the international contracts?
Yeah, please.
It can be very confusing to all of us, especially the manufacturers who are exporting. And
Yes.
there is a lot of instability in the geopolitics due to this tariff war, due to this unpredicting behavior of especially Mr. Trump. Someday
Yes.
10%, someday additional 15%, then suddenly 50%, then 0, and then coming back. So
Yeah.
what are the hidden risks involved in this? If you can share your thoughts on this, please.
Yes, so this is very interesting that you had shifted me to the public policy to private contracts. And this is very interesting because when you talk in terms of that the export of these apparels or the fashions, that you need to enter into a contract with a foreign buyer. And as you were talking about that the tariff which is swinging, rather to say sometime 30%, sometime 40%, sometime 10%. So that is, there is a clause in a contract that the people who had spoken before me must be knowing, that is a force majeure clause. That is in fact a frustration clause. So currently till date, that even in India or in many courts, even in the arbitration or even in the mediation also, they talk about that the tariff reductions are in fact not considered to be an example of force majeure, right? Because tariff is not in the hands of the exporter or the importer, but the court's approach is that is there in terms of to treat this the increase or decrease in the tariff as in fact that is an example of force majeure, and that leads to that the exporter who is in fact exporting that particular that the product, that is they required to pay extra tariff. So my advice is that when that an exporter is in fact entering into a contract, they require to in terms of the hardship clause or the force majeure clause that is there, that this can be in fact modified to an extent that if this kind of tariff or this tariff increase or decrease takes place, that will lead to price renegotiation clause, and that in fact will remove from the risk of this force majeure. Because if you see the Indian Supreme Court approach also that is currently getting followed, that Subrata Ghosh versus Mangniram Bangar, this is 1954 case, and that is still talking in terms of the force majeure clause. So my advice is that as a lawyer or as a law professor, that whenever that the contractor is signing that the force majeure clause or having that the supervening clause, instead of taking this Indian Contract Act section 56 clause that is there, the old inform, we require to take Article 79 of the CISG, Convention on International Sale of Goods Act, which is considered to be the most modern in terms of the hardship clause, where that if the tariff reductions or tariff increase that is there, tariff in terms of uncertainty is there, that will lead to that the renegotiation of the price. So this is my first take. The second one that is there is that sometime it do happens, because when that if you come under the provision of section 301 of the US list or the watch list, then in that case sanctions may be imposed against you. The sanctions may be imposed that if your company is blacklisted. So my advice is that there is a need to draft a sanction exit clause in the contract, and that will make sure that if if the sanctions are imposed, there will be no immediate termination of that particular clause, but that will lead to that is in fact renegotiation of that particular clause. Because what I propose is there is a need to rethink that how the contracts are drafted between the seller and the buyer. So this is in fact my two suggestions in terms of the contract compliance.
Thank you, Professor Bipin. One more question, the last question of this, that do you feel that Indian government is doing enough, or there is a need for policy reforms to strengthen India's competitiveness in the global trade? What are your views on this? If you can briefly discuss this with us.
So this is very interesting, because in terms of policy, that the first and foremost that India is currently, because as you were asking my previous panelists also, the issues pertaining to sustainability and the consumer awareness. Current Indian government, if you think in terms of the India EU Regional Trade Act, the FTA, or India Oman FTA, that is there, we had used that. If you see that India EU chapter number 17 is completely devoted on this sustainability clause one, right? So what I mean to say is that Indian government, along with the business people, that FICCI, SOCHM, and the CII, these people are engaged enough, because I had worked with the Ministry of Commerce, and that is why I know that the government works with the PPP model, public-private participation model. So one thing that the government has done is unified logistics interface platform that has created, and in that the customs, ports, railways, shippings. So the 30% of this logistics things has already been digitally connected. So this is one thing. The second one that is there is that in terms of exports, that is in fact the government of India's the project, the Gati Shakti, that has significantly contributed in terms of that the goods are in fact transported very effectively, right? So that the next thing that is there is that we had created developmental hubs, which was earlier known as SEZs, right? Even though that is in fact that we had lost the case at the WTO in terms of SEZ, but then again that the dual market benefit that the developmental hubs that it has provided, that is really interesting. And then in fact that in terms of the legal things, legal reforms that has taken place, if you see that the Charter Party Contract Act got amended, Bill of Lading Act got amended, that the Carriage of Goods by Sea Act got amended. So what I mean to say is that, and in terms of the digital divide also, that many reforms that is taking place. So my understanding is that the Indian governmental approach in terms of preparing the fashion apparel industry in terms of the latest challenges, that is, of course, very welcome.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bipin. Now I invite all the panelists for some 1 or 2 questions, because we are already over with the time. So the question to all the panelists is that, is India truly benefiting from China plus one, or are we overestimating this opportunity? Anyone please can answer for this?
Yeah, my answer is, of course, that China plus many strategy that is in fact definitely benefiting India, and that is not overestimating to the fact, because if you see that in terms of statistics, that our share in the global trade now is of course 3.9%, and that is definitely that we are getting benefited of whatever that China is.
I thank you, Professor Bipin. My question is, are we really benefiting from that? Because if we see the stats from last few years, our exports are not actually going up. It is more or less stagnant since many years. So are we really taking the advantage of that?
But in recent times, 3.9% has been there. Earlier it was low. So understanding where that has definitely coming up, but not that much as we could have expected.
Okay. Yeah.
If I may comment for a minute, Professor Tiwari. There is a confluence of factors, and I would say a convergence of factors. One is this belated recognition on part of the European Union and, of course, the America, that they have to somehow move away from China. Of course, China plus one, as everybody talks about. Second is the, if I may use the word, rash of treaties that India has, very patiently sat through, looked at the fine print and signed. Not only everybody talks of treaties with UK, EU, and of course the oncoming with USA, but there are treaties signed with EFTA. There's treaty, as Professor Bipin Kumar said, signed with Oman, with UAE. Negotiations are on with Mercosur, negotiations are on with Chile, negotiations are on with Canada. Also, you look at the environment that the government is creating, ease of doing business. I'm just recalling from my memory, but Professor Bipin would know better. I believe we have climbed over 75 spots in the ease of doing business ranking. Our competitiveness on the logistics performance index, I don't remember what the scores are. I've written it somewhere. But again, in fact, we are ahead of some other countries. If you just allow me to take a look at it on the logistics performance. Give me a second. I have just some notes over here. Give me a second. Yeah, so our overall ranking is 38th. It was 44th in 2018. And a decade ago, we had a score of 54. So we have climbed almost 16 to 17 spots. Besides, today we have the world's highest, second largest road network. We're only behind China. There's a dedicated freight corridor coming up, ports, inlands and waterways coming up. In fact, a lot of us would know that major mother container vessels, those vessels which have 1,000 containers or so, would never dock. Only 25% of containers, mother container vessels, docked. And now with the arrival of the Vadhavan port, there is this port coming in Kerala, Vizhinjam. Then all these things, I believe, it's the government, it's the state, it's the policy, it's the industrial associations. They are all working in convergence. Plus, and this is really the time when we have to take care of, we have to leverage our cultural advantages. And I believe this will happen, and I'm sure these rash of treaties will all help us, with the convergence, the confluences, and the cohesiveness of the think of the government of India. Will all make it happen. I remain very confident about that. So it's a question of geopolitics, our policy, our dynamism, the fact that we have been putting a lot of money, attention into our infrastructure, will all, I believe, somewhere converge, that convergence is happening and will make happen. Just last one point, and here again, I'm sure Dr. Bipin Kumar will know more. Rationalization of labor laws. I was looking at Mr. Dinesh Hinduja's interview, I think maybe it was like 2 years ago, and I worked there for some time. This was in 2008, before they were absorbed by Blackstone. 48 factories for 54,000 workers. Why? because our labor laws prevented us from having larger factories, right? So the government of India has converted these 29 fragmented central laws into 4 comprehensive labor codes. So all these things are happening. A lot of states like Tamil Nadu, or for that matter, Odisha, are having their own policies to attract investors. I don't remember the name. Crocs again has set up a dedicated manufacturing. This is not contract manufacturing. This is a partnership. So I believe the scene is moving slowly, steadily. I believe this change, even if slow, is currently irreversible.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very interesting that if you see that India-EU regional trade agreement, for the first time that Indian government had accepted international labor standards in its fold. So this is very encouraging, not only that the 1947 labor legislation which Professor Ramesh Ji was talking about, but further that it had went to the extent of accepting international labor standards. I can tell you that Rajasthan was the first state which has implemented international labor standards in terms of policy, because labor comes under this state list. After that, Madhya Pradesh, and then some problems that has taken place in UP. So this is very encouraging to have that international labor standards has been accepted by Government of India for the first time. And not only that the labor standards, in fact, even that the gender equality related matters, that has also went ahead by the Government of India in accepting that. So this is very encouraging, and that is the environment that is getting created in which that everyone who is having a stake in the promotion of that is exports and other things, that is taken care of. So this is very interesting.
So it is glad to know that Indian government is doing a lot of work in this, and the future is bright. Just one quick question to all the panelists: that what is the one bold move India must take in next 3 years? One bold move, single bold move, which India should take in the next 3 years. Sir, we would like to hear from Mr. Nagpal and Mr. Banerjee.
So I think you heard the panelists, both the center and the government, state governments are sort of very, very prudent and in terms of ambitious, in terms of growing the apparel industry. So there is continuous sort of encouragement to industry, including reforms around labor, clean energy being a big sort of initiative. And a few days back, I was in Bhopal, and like Orissa and Jharkhand and some of the states, even MP for that matter, Maharashtra,
Yeah.
have been very, very encouraging to the industry at large. The PM Mitra Park, some of the initiatives around it. So I see one is augmenting the capacity in terms of getting in scale, because as Indian retailers and brands would sort of grow, a scale capacity would really be required, because you see a lot of retailers today are looking at neighboring countries for scale capacity, and therefore that also has to sort of come into play. So infrastructure investment, making trade policy sort of liberal, looking at labor laws to be sort of flexible. So some of that is already into play. You see a larger sort of investment coming into the ports, supply chain, the logistics, highways. So one side is the infrastructure in terms of how do you sort of enable movement of both goods and people. That's second. Third is, I think if you look at Indian, brain power, if I may to call it, or the intellectual power, whether you go Far East or whether you go to Africa, you find Indian managers and leaders sort of at the helm of the affair, whether it is on the manufacturing side, merchandising side, marketing side, and if you go back not very far off, if you go to Bangalore today, you will find global capability centers for most of the retailers in Bangalore and Hyderabad in Chennai. Everything that retailers are doing, whether designing a store, planning a promotion in the store, handling data, CRM, you know, planning merchandising, planning replenishments, all that work is done by the global capability centers. If you look at the IT development, it's done by the global capability centers in some of this. With AI coming in, there is a quantum jump that's going to come in terms of digitalizing processes, and fast tracking information. So there is tremendous amount of work that's happening, from the government side, industry side, from Indian managers, so as to speak. So it's going to be an orchestrated and a synergistic sort of movement coming together by all of the industry together, and government support would be at play, and policy will get further simplified. What also helps is economy sort of getting liberalized and a more fundamental sort of macroeconomic play that's out there. So the way I see it is, and other pieces, we must encourage foreign investment both in raw material and manufacturing, because at times there is, especially on the man-made material side, whether it's fabrics, footwear as an industry, there is lot of raw material import that's happening. So one will have to look at how do you sort of, in the import driven industry, how do you bring in capacity, expertise, investment, even foreign direct investment. How do you sort of incentivize it? Because at some point in time, we have done, as a country, we have done in automobiles. Japanese manufacturers came in, Korean manufacturers came in. They had set up Gurgaon as a base, Chennai as a base. So what has happened if you look at in the automotive industry, in the information technology industry, somewhere also has to play out in apparel and textile as well. And I don't think we should hesitate. So there could be a chance that there could be a selective liberalization in imports purely for creating capacity in the medium term, attracting talent, attracting technocrats from those segments of the industry coming in and ensuring that both Indian entrepreneurs and global entrepreneurs are looking at India as an opportunity beyond. And some of the panelists referred to China plus one. So India has a unique opportunity. On one side, we have a robust consumption, and that story will play out. On other side, with the trade agreements with Europe, US, and I'm sure Canada, Australia next, and then some of it already in advanced stages. So one would see that both supply side also has to sort of gear up, and we should look at all forms of investments. And in short term, if one was to sort of allow, especially imports, in a calibrated manner in certain segments, and equally coupled with the technology and people to sort of come in with that kind of expertise, we should sort of liberalize some of that movement as well. I think there is a broader appreciation and acknowledgement of what is required. There is agility in terms of what's happening. So a lot of factors are coming together. We need to stay course on the momentum and drive this piece. Obviously, get past this uncertainty which is there. But I think we are a strong nation, and a fairly people with a lot of perseverance and grit and intellectual power. So I'm sure we'll come together and ride this opportunity wave. Of course, you have to pass through some of short-term turbulence, but like all things, this shall pass. We should remain resilient and strong.
Yes. Due to the paucity of time, I'm not taking the rapid fire thing, but there is one very interesting question has come from the audience. related to the discussion which we are having, that what structural or policy advantages still allow China to maintain price competitiveness despite rising labor cost, and what has to be done in India to reach that ambition of 2047 of PM. Very interesting question has come. So can I request the panelists to answer this question?
Yeah, Manoj, can I answer that?
Yes, please.
You know what? China didn't win only on cheap labor alone. Okay. It hyper capacity, hyper, efficient environment, tightly integrated ecosystems. Unless and until we have that, it's very difficult to, challenge China. It's like how they won the race. Supplier within 10, 20 kilometers, raw materials, processing, assembly, logistic, all synchronized. Government, infra, policy, working like a single machine. Right?
Correct.
That's where China took away the game. But again, if other countries have to even if they aspire to come close to China, they have to work on this. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
So, Durga, how many years do you feel that India will take to reach to that level?
It's very difficult to answer. But again,
but the reforms are on in India also, and I think the ecosystem is getting very favorable.
Reforms are on paper. Reforms are on file.
Okay.
Even is India ready to have even 10%? Forget about 10, 5% of capacity of China. They don't have capacity at all. Unless and until they build those with system, with processes, government, private, players working together in a synchronized manner, everything, it's hard. But again, things are in place. If efforts are put into the right channel, can be done within, say, 5-7 years, provided things are in place. Otherwise, I mean, other countries who are ready for it, they will take the game away.
Yes. Thank you, Durga, for telling us the real picture. I see. But still, as far as the commitment of Indian people and Indian government is concerned, we all are very positive, very hopeful, and I am strongly in the opinion that the future is really bright. We may not be competing, or we may not be equal or beating China, but yes, we will not leave any stone unturned to reach out to that. That is our commitment and our mission. And it has been a wonderful discussion with all of you. It was very enlightening to have experts from different domains, and I'm sure that my fellow colleagues, the students from NIFT across campuses who have joined through YouTube Live, and the industry colleagues, they might have gained some knowledge, some more insights with this wonderful discussion. And we wish that we will come up stronger, and we need to live with this VUCA environment, as Mr. Banerjee has said, and we need to continue excel in that, because these VUCA and all these things will be the part of our life, but it is not going to affect our ambitions. Like Mr. Nagpal is very positive in this, that these things will keep going and coming, but our long-term mission is very positive. So with this, I thank you very much. Thank you for my panelists, and I wish you all the best. And I'm sorry to take more time, but the discussion was so interesting that we keep continued. So I hope all the audience must have liked this. Thank you very much for this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.